The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session, once again. It is July 22nd, 2025, and we have a lot to report on, so let's start. First of all, we're going to talk about the situation in Zaporozhye direction. The Russians, after taking control over the town of Kamyansky, have managed to consolidate their control over the town and taken these fields outside of it, and are advancing north towards the town of Stepnogorsk, which could prove to be a challenge due to these commie blocks here in the very southern part of the town and also within the center of it. And then going further eastwards in the Orikov direction, there's reports of Russian advances in Mala Takhmachka, though it's not confirmed largely yet. And then going in the area that borders Donetsk region, there are reports speculating from Deep State that the Russians from Novopol and Zeleny Pole have managed to enter Zaporozhye Oblast from the east and start contesting for the village of Temirivka. If this village were to fall, then these two villages within the Dnieper region will be in big trouble. Especially, of course, now that we know what's going on in the Voskresenka direction here. So after the capture of Mayern and Pidubine, the Russians have consolidated their control and have taken basically all these fields north and south of Voskresenka. Voskresenka is now de facto in a cauldron, and half of it is now under Russian control. Initially, it appeared that the Russians had taken control of Voskresenka, but now that does not appear to be the case. But either way, I think the Ukrainians here are cooked. And then, in addition to that, we can see that the Russians are also advancing towards Dnipropetrovsk Oblast in the direction of Oleksandrohad. It's very likely that this village is probably going to fall in August, along with Andriivka, Kalevstove, and Zeleny Gai. And then once this happens, then the Russians will either stop here at the Vovcha River, or they're going to try to enter Dnipropetrovsk through these areas here in the southern direction, and then try to flank the Ukrainian defenses north of the strategic town of Guleipol. Now, Zeleny Gai is contested. This is no surprise. Deep State themselves confirmed this. And Novokhatsky has been secured by the Russians. In addition, in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, the Russians have consolidated control over the village of Dachny, which is arguably their first settlement in Dnipropetrovsk to come under their complete control, and have also taken these fields just north of Yalta. Russians seem to be advancing towards the village of Filia, and this pocket within Donetsk region is about to be closed up by the Russians too. So all these fields south of Horikove and fields north of Oleksivka are all coming under Russian control pretty quickly. So by sometime in August 2025, this pocket will be closed, and the Russians will only dig even deeper into Dnipropetrovsk. Moravka is still contested, by the way, even though some say it's under Ukrainian control again, but I say it's contested. Now, in the Pokrovsk direction, first of all, there's a lot to talk about. So let's start with Udachny. Now, Udachny has been cut off partially from the west, and this is one of the only ways to supply this village. Deep State has put the entire southern section of the town, or the village, in a gray zone, which likely means that the Russians have taken control of it. And in addition, Deep State has also confirmed this part of the northern part of Udachny to be under Russian control too. So if these reports were to be true, in which the Russians take control over half of Udachny, including this, then Ukrainians will have no choice but to retreat. And this is going to be a disaster because the TO-406 road is one of the main roads that go into Pokrovsk. But this road, though, has been cut for quite some time now. Ukrainians have attempted to counterattack here during the Rasputitsa period in February and March, but they have been unsuccessful. And speaking of Pokrovsk, there is a lot to go through. Where to start? So apparently, there was geolocated footage of Ukrainians being ambushed by supposedly Russian DRGs, deep reconnaissance groups, who have attacked a group of Ukrainians near this gas station here. And there's even a report now, especially by Deep State, that most, if not like half of Zaporozhye has come under Russian control. And also there's a report that the Russians have managed to take control over areas at least this far. And if this were to be true, then Pokrovsk is already cooked before the battle even started. The E50 road, which goes through here, by the way, will be cut off by the Russians. And there will be essentially no way to supply Pokrovsk through conventional means. And the Russians will be able to drone the living hell out of Ukrainian convoys going into Pokrovsk on the E50 road that goes to in and out of Dnipropetrovsk region. I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians have already taken control over these areas here and these areas, which effectively not only starts the Battle of Pokrovsk, but it already puts the Russians already in a winning, direction. Like, it seems all but inevitable now, especially with the reports up north, which we'll talk about soon, that Pokrovsk's days are already numbered. And you can already see some pro-Ukraine propagandists already saying that the place was insignificant or not strategic or, I don't know, some stupid excuse of copium. But it doesn't matter. But yeah, the Russians appear to be on the way to taking the city of Pokrovsk from the armed forces of Ukraine, though I do expect it to take some time before the city is taken completely. But it is quite obvious now that the battle has begun for Krasnaya Amisk, which is the former name of Pokrovsk. Now, we do have an advance, surprisingly, south of Mayanograd, or Mayanograd, whatever you want to call it. Anatoly Radov has reported an advance down here in these fields, which are just west of Mykolaiivka, and also just south of this big Kami block area within Mayanograd. So, yeah, the Battle of Mayanograd is about to start too, and it's going to happen from the south, and I also expect Russians to push further from the east as well. And also, this entire pocket here, which was west of this key crossroad section, has now been cleared by the Russians. Lyubivka is under Russian control, along with rumors of Mykolaiivka also coming under Russian control too. However, Syriac, as of today, has kept the village under Ukrainian control, though some people dispute this claim. I kind of dispute it myself, but there apparently was footage of them still being in the village. So, for that reason, I guess I can understand why he put it back under AFU control, but again, I dispute this claim. And also, it has been confirmed that Ukrainians have lost a chunk of Novoekonomichne as well. The far northern part, which is a small yet significant part of the village, has come under Russian control. And also, there's a report that Russians were ousted from this part of the village too. But I don't think that's going to change anything because the news coming up north is really, really bad. So, the Russians have broken through. They have captured, after taking Razine, they have captured the village of Fedorivka, they have captured Boykivka, they have captured Novotoretsky, they have captured rumored Mayak, they have also reportedly started battling it out for the village of Penkivka, and have also managed to advance as far as here, outside of the village of Nove Shakove. Now, what is the significance of these advances, you may ask? Now, here's the thing. First of all, before I go any further, I just want to say that Syriac does not have this map completely up to date. So what you're seeing now is likely going to be different tomorrow. Not just any different. It looks worse than what you're seeing right now. It's really bad. And as far as I understand, if the Russians did in fact cut this road here, then Shakove and Volodymyrivka are already cooked. They're already in a cauldron. The Russians will already take these areas essentially without a problem. And if the reports of them being outside of Nove Shakove are true, then another strategic town in Donetsk region will be in big trouble. Dobro Pila. Now, Dobropila, before the war, was home to nearly 30,000 people. And as you can see, there's a lot of commie blocks here. So this has to be a very sizable place. And when compared to the city of Pokrovsk, it's obviously nowhere as important. However, it is a sizable town or city. And when compared to Pokrovsk, there's not really a lot of places to supply this town. So if the Russians were to take this, like take these series of villages here, you will have already cut off 2 roads to Dobropila. So effectively, if Pokrovsk were to fall to Russia later this summer or fall 2025, then I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians said, you know what, let's just finish the job and go for Dobropila. And I'm telling you this, guys, right now, there is a strong likelihood, considering how less, I don't know, like, considering how less, like, of many roads there are going into the city, that it will fall pretty quickly. I feel like if there is a battle of Dobropila, it's not going to last that long. It will likely last as long as maybe, I don't know, Karakove, which was like 2 to 3 months long, or perhaps it could end up like Novogradivka, where the town just falls in like days, or like 1 week at like maximum tops. Dobropila is cooked if Pokrovsk falls. And all these fields outside of the city of Pokrovsk and Minorgrad are not as well defended. And it also doesn't help that the E50 road going to Pavlograd in Dnieper region will also be in big trouble too. So I am smelling a post-Ugledar fall 2024 scenario for Donetsk region, like from Pokrovsk in this area here. Everything here in fall 2025 has the potential to fall. Dobropila, Minorgrad, Pokrovsk. Like everything just east of the Dnipropetrovsk border is going to fall to Russia. And once this happens, then the Kiev regime will have no choice but to, I don't know, start acknowledging that there really are problems. And Deep State has said themselves that there is a catastrophic, yes, a catastrophic, that's literally the word that they used, manpower problem. Like, I cannot, like, comment any further on how bad this is. But I'm telling you guys this right now. In the next few days or so, what you see right now on this map is only going to get worse for the Ukrainians. And I feel like it's getting to the point where there is no point of return for the AFU. Now, in the Konstantinovka direction, a good chunk of Poltavka has come under Russian control, and the Russians have regained Popov Yar after the Ukrainians counterattacked it. In addition, Russians have also started contesting too for the village of Ruzhin Yar, but I think I already pointed this out in the last video. Yablonovka has come mostly under Russian control, along with Alexandro Kalinove, though Syriac hasn't colored it in yet. And then outside of the city of Toretsk, yes, folks, your eyes are not deceiving you, Novospassky and the southern half of Shasharbanivka has come under Russian control. And with that, I think it is safe to say we can put a fork in Toretsk. The battle for this city is over. It is done. Ukrainians can no longer counterattack whatsoever in this direction, and it pretty much kickstarts the Battle of Konstantinovka. And speaking of which, if we go up north, Bila Gora is under Russian control, and Ukrainians have also confirmed through Deep State that Dylivka is mostly under Russian control. So all these areas here are under Russian control, and with Bila Gora under RU control, sorry if I had to say that a few times, all these fields here are now a sitting duck, and I think Russia is just going to steamroll this area. I don't think Ukrainian drones are going to be enough to stop the advances, especially now with Stupachki being taken by the Russians. And then going a little further up north, the news in Chasiv Yar is really bad for the Ukrainians. They have lost around 90% control of the town of Chasiv Yar, and it now all seems but certain that either later this month or next month, like at long last, Chasiv Yar is going to fall to Russia. And I find it quite fitting that it's going to fall at the same time as Chasiv Yar. And once these two cities fall, then nothing's going to really stop a Russian offensive onto Konstantinovka. In fact, it's going to get flanked from not one, not two, but three directions. And maybe four. Konstantinovka is going to get sandwiched. And the only way to supply the city is from the western direction. From Slovyansk and the Kramatorsk. Literally. So if you combine the situation in Konstantinovka and the situation in Pokrovsk / Krasnaya Armysk and also Mayanograd, Ukraine is going to have a very miserable summer 2025. And it's only going to get worse. The fighting season is not even, close to being over yet. This whole thing is going to go on until probably the end of November. So maybe after Turkey Day here in USA, the Rasputitsa will then kick in with the snow falling in, which will, of course, cause Russian advances to slow down. But I think by we get to that point, Russians will have already taken control of these cities. And then, in addition, it also won't help that you also got a major corruption bill, anti-corruption bill that, it's not even anti-corruption, it's pro-corruption. Sorry if I got words mixed up or something, but, so, there's this big corruption bill that's being passed, and it essentially kicks out the U.S.'s anti-corruption agencies, I think, or defunds them. I don't know what they do, so I'm probably ignorant in Ukrainian domestic affairs. But from what I understand, a lot of Ukrainians are not happy about this law, and they're going out on the streets of Kiev to protest against the Rada for voting for this thing. And if Zelensky were to sign this bill into law, then Ukraine is essentially only proving people like us right. That it really is no different from Russia. It's just as corrupt and just as trigger happy. So yeah, the situation in this part of the Donetsk region is looking really bad for the Ukrainians. Though I do say it could be worse. It could be worse. But yeah, I think the breaking point within Donetsk region is coming later this year, around fall 2025, when Konstantinovka and Pokrovsk are gone. And to be honest with you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if Konstantinovka ended up like Selidova last year. Like, Ukrainians are just cauldroned from most areas, and then they just run away from the city without a fight. And because Russians control the high grounds in Chasiv Yar, I wouldn't be surprised if Russians simply started advancing towards the city of Truskovka, which would put them right outside of Kramatorsk. And then you'll hear loud panic alarms going off in Kiev. Now, just to get back in complete calm and such, I need to take a little deep breath here. Let's talk about Siversk. So Ukrainians have counterattacked, and it appears that the Russians have been booted out from the outskirts of Siversk again. However, they are advancing within the village of Serebryanka. And also, in the Liman direction, the Russians appear to be contesting for the village of Torske again, but it's not certain if they were able to capture anything, though Deep State has the entire village under Russian, gray zone, not Russian control yet, but they have the entire village, like 95% of it under Russian control or gray zone area. And then going a little further north, Ukrainians have counterattacked in the village of Kaprivka, though Russians have advanced in the south here, and even Deep State confirmed this report. And Ukrainians also have split control over the village of Ridkodub. So, there's a lot to talk about. In the Kharkiv direction, it appears Radovka is, I think it's going to fall to Russia soon, and it appears that these fields outside are also now under Russian control. So keep that in mind as we see a possible battle of Kupiansk later this year. And then, as you guys know by now, the Russians have taken control of this border village in the Kharkiv region, Datyarne. And then in the Volchansk area, no changes here, except, of course, Russians are consolidating their positions in Volchansk. Nothing changed in Lipsy direction, which is north of Kharkiv. And then going into Sumy region, there's a lot of mixed results here for the Russians as of late. So Yanakovka is going quite well for the Russians, and I wouldn't be surprised if the village or the town were to fall next month in August. And it has also now been confirmed that Verachny is under Russian control. Unfortunately, though, the Russians have appeared to have lost control of Kendrativka. So yeah, Russians are having a mixed bag time in Sumy region, though I am expecting things to improve now that they have kicked the Ukrainians out of Tetkino and are contesting right now for the village of Rysivka. But yeah, so yeah, keep an eye as well on what's happening in Kiev with all this corruption going on. And as I said, if Zelensky signs that bill, he may as well have signed Ukraine's final death certificate, even though you could arguably say he has already killed Ukraine many times with all these bad decisions, not just in negotiations, but also on the military front, that is. So yeah, folks, that's going to do it for today's video. So tell me in the comment section below what you tell me of the recent developments that are taking place in Ukraine. And I will see you all next week. So I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you all stay safe, and goodbye.